Hi YouTube, I'd like to do a review of my Victor Hypernano X900. My particular racket is a MY code, meaning this was actually designated for the Malaysian national team. These are quite expensive, much more expensive than the CNs and the other codes out there. You'll see that this is made in Taiwan. They classify this as an even balance racket, and you can see here that on the stiff and flexible scale, it's right in between the midpoint of stiff and mid. So for those who don't have Victor rackets or don't know Victor rackets, that dot there on that stiff and flexible area, it can actually be quite so that dot can move over just in tiny increments. So it's not like the next step for that dot will be full stiff. There are rackets, Victor rackets out there where the dot will be in between where this dot is and the stiff, and the increments are very, very, very minute. So it's very precise in a way. So this isn't the stiffest racket out there, but it also isn't the most flexible. It's in terms of stiffness and flex, it feels a lot like a leaning N9, and I'm going to go back to that later. First, I'm going to talk about the design details. The colorway of this racket is very unique. The red, black, white is laid out very beautifully, and then you get also these gold accents around the racket here, and of course the lettering here, and the Victor logo itself is gold. So it's a really distinctive design, and it stands out. It's unique. It doesn't look cheap at all. It's got a really nice shiny finish to it. Right away, I'm going to point out to potential buyers of this racket is that this is definitely not a beginner's racket. Just for those who haven't seen my other videos, I come from playing an N90 for my singles game, which is notoriously a difficult racket to use. My doubles racket, I predominantly use a leaning N9, and recently I've also used a Victor Bravesword 12L. And that's generally, and then this is my racket that I use almost strictly when I travel to China, because I'm back and forth. I use my N9 in Canada, and I use this here in China. So right away, it took me a long time. I'm talking about months to play into this racket, and I cannot really pinpoint why it took so long. Feeling it now, the closest racket this feels like, if we're talking about another brand, and forgive me because I don't play with Yonex rackets very often and I don't really try them much, but this feels a lot like an N9 leaning, except heavier. It has the same type of just overall balance and flex to it. It just feels a bit heavier, so there's a little, you require a lot more forearm strength. This is not designated as a doubles racket. This is a singles racket, but you can of course use it as doubles as well. But because it's heavier and the construction is going to be obviously different from leaning rackets, it tends to react slightly slower, but what you're getting in return in this racket over the leaning N9 is that it hits, I would say, considerably harder. Your drives are really hard, and your smashes are hard as well. And I'd say it actually reacts just as quickly as an N9. So once you've built the strength for this racket, and you've gotten used to how it needs to be played with, it is a better racket than an N9 in most ways because it's as fast and as reactive as an N9, but it hits harder. So that's probably the closest racket comparison I can have for this when I'm going to compare it to another brand. I do use this mainly for doubles, and I am definitely a front court player. I'm better as a front court player, and this racket does not feel slow to me now. I definitely have gotten better as a player compared to when I first purchased this racket, and I think I've sort of taken quite a large leap, not just in my playing style, but my forearm and my wrist strength has improved quite a bit. And that's actually been, and I actually haven't been playing with this racket. I've been playing mainly with my N9, and I've been playing with my N90 singles quite a bit for the last 2 months. And then I'm now in China for some work, so I picked up this racket again, since this is my racket that I play with here. I played the first night I came back, and I was in the groove right away. And it was very shocking to me too, because I picked up this racket earlier this year, and I spent a good 5-6 months in China, and I frankly, I could just not get used to this racket, and I almost hated the fact that I bought this racket. So having said that, again, this is not a beginner's racket whatsoever. This is a very advanced racket. I'm not sure if it has anything to do with the code. My MY code, I know the construction's a little bit different from the other codes out there. They say, like the professional that sold me this racket, the Victor dealer here, said that the national team rackets are going to be slightly different in construction. They're going to be stronger and more consistent in your play and more powerful, and of course you can string them a bit higher without like the rackets really suffering any type of strain, I guess. So I'm not sure if it's more particular to this racket, but for sure, if the other coated X900s feel even 95% like this racket, I would say it's not a beginner's racket. So please keep that in mind. If you're a beginner and you buy this, or even just an intermediate and you buy this, you might not be able to play into this. It might take quite a bit of time to play into this racket. I cannot really pinpoint why. 5 months ago or 6 months ago when I purchased this racket, I couldn't play with it like I can play an N9. I could pick up an N9, play with it almost immediately. And now that I'm better, I play with an N9 even better as well. But I don't really know why it's so much difficult to use this racket over an N9. A racket that I recently played with that I really enjoyed actually playing with, which is much different from this racket and much different from my N9 also, is the Victor Brave Sword 12L. And I know that's also a aging racket. That's a racket that's been around for a long time under different iterations. It's been called the Brave Sword 12, just the 12, and then the 12N, and then the 12L came out as well. So the 12L stands for light. It's considerably lighter. It weighs in at under 80 grams, as from what I believe. And that is a really, really fast racket. That's sort of, the Lee Young-dae successor racket, and it's definitely a front court racket. Like a Lee Young-dae type of style player, you don't finish the rally. You set up. You're the person that sets up, or you intercept a lot. And I played with that racket because my partner plays with that racket, and he let me try it, and I was really shocked. I never gave it a chance in the past because I don't like hyper light rackets, but after playing with that racket a couple of matches, I really actually fell in love with that racket. Unfortunately, in China they don't actually sell that racket. So I bought a different racket, and I'll do a review on that later as well. But anyways, I think if you're just getting into the game, maybe something like a Brave Sword 12L would be better, or even a Brave Sword 11. An 11 is considerably heavier than a 12L, so keep that in mind, and it is more head heavy, so it'll be a little bit more difficult to use. But for the Hypernano X900, this is definitely a difficult racket to use, and it will definitely take time to learn how to use it. It's a very steep learning curve for this racket. If you've already bought this racket and you feel like you're not playing so great with it, I definitely understand. Give it some time, just keep practicing. It's a really strange nuance. It has a really strange type of reaction to it, to your input. It's not super hyperactive, so it's not, you tell it to do something and it does it right away, but at the same time, it doesn't lag like a heavy racket. So like my N90, there is a very, very distinctive lag. You know, you put an input and there's lag because the racket is so heavy and head heavy, and it's just meant for singles and power, like pure power racket. You just know that your brain told your hand to do this, and then the racket delays, another half a second. For some reason, this racket doesn't feel like it's doing that, but it does have this slight, I don't know if I want to even call it a delay. It must be the way that it flexes. It doesn't it doesn't communicate the delay, but it seems like there might be a slight delay in response, and it must be just the way that the shaft is flexing. But then once you get the timing right with this racket and you're hitting it with the right timing, then this produces power, like very, very impressive power. I string all my rackets with leaning leaning number ones, which is a 0.65 millimeter thickness string, and I string all my rackets to 30 pounds. So keep that in mind. That's what I use on this racket as well. And yeah, I think that's basically what I have to say about this racket. It's I believe Victor is pushing this model line quite a bit this year. 2018, I think they have the new Hypernano X900, I think that's what it's called. And it looks totally different as well. I'm not sure how that plays, and I maybe will have a chance to try that out as well. But that is my Hypernano X900 review. This is a pretty pricey racket, and if you have a chance to demo one, I really suggest you demo one first. Because I went from hating this racket after I bought it and I regretted buying it to now I really like this racket and how I'm able to perform with it. I'm still not still not good enough to use the maximum capabilities of this racket, but I've seen glimpses of it where I have been really on my game and I've been hitting and got my footwork and positioning properly and able to exert the power onto the bird with this racket, and it's really amazing. And also because I play front court, I'm more of a front court player. It doesn't slow me down too much. But having said that, I also picked up a Aura Speed 70K, which is a hyper light racket, and I purposely picked it before you because I really want to try that front court, and I want to see if that even makes me better front court and faster. So stick around. I'm going to be doing a review of the Aura Speed 70K as well in 4U, and hope you enjoy. Thank you.